In its ambition to make Europe climate neutral by 2050, the European Commission led the rollout of era-defining legislations during its current term, and it aims to mobilize at least €1 trillion in sustainable investment over the next decade. As the European Green Deal faces political headwinds in the run-up to the 2024 elections, what does its future look like? This is what we discussed at the WEF session. European Green Deal, anyone?
Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, thank you.
Thank you.
Executive Vice President for European Green Deal from the European Commission from Brussels, joining us, Maros Sefcovic. Thank you very much for being here. Esther Baijet, President and Chief Executive Officer Novozymes in Denmark, Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders. Thank you. And Maxim Timchenko, Chief Executive Officer DTAC Ukraine. Prime Minister, against the backdrop of European elections in a few months, political headwinds that the Green agenda is facing, are you more bearish or are you more bullish about the future of the European Green Deal?
I continue to be profoundly bullish about the future of the Green Deal, because when this discussion started a few years ago, I mean, the main argument in support of the Green Deal had primarily to do with the importance of reducing emissions in order to protect the environment. We've been subject to catastrophic floods, for example, this summer, the necessity to play a leading role in this transition. Since then, we've had a geopolitical shock. And it has also been incredibly clear that some of the solutions offered by the Green Deal also make profound economic sense. Just look, for example, at Greece, our penetration of renewables, how cheap renewables are. I mean, there are hours during the day when we actually have negative prices. So I think there is a general understanding that we need to push forward with this agenda.
Thank you so much. Executive Vice President for the European Green Deal, Interinstitutional Relations and Foresight, European Commission, Maros Sefcovic. Your view on that? Are you more bullish or bearish?
I'm, of course,
I'd be surprised if you were bearish. Yeah?
And yes.
I am bullish, and I am in a category which I understand it's described by the political scientists as a happy warrior. You know, I mean, being in this business, you have to be optimistic, because you see, you know, what kind of distance we have already covered. Every single year, every single summer, we are reminded that we have only one planet, and that these weather-related disasters are bearing more and more cost, lots of human tragedies, and simply there is no alternative. So that's, I would say, the very big picture. But coming, you know, to the economic aspect of it, I mean, for Europe, the Green Deal, it's our growth strategy, and through the Green Deal, you see that there is actually huge international competition about what I would describe future-oriented technology. And what we need to develop is stronger business case for the Green Deal, for our investors. You have to be in close interaction with our citizens. Therefore, we started with the Green Dialogues. We have to listen to the CEOs of the companies across the Europe, because they will tell you, you know, we can do much more if you would remove this technological block, or if you would create real single market for the Green Deal, or if we simply by state aid support this or that technology because it's not that mature. And I think there you see that we are also doing a lot of rethinking, because we have to react on what is happening on the global level. The massive subsidies offered by IRA in US, of course, massive subsidies by which China is supporting its exports also towards Europe. So we are adjusting our policies as well. And I was quite happy that last week we did this first landmark decision where we authorized the state aid for the Nordvolt to actually build the next gigafactory in Europe and not in the US.
Well, you said we need to listen more to the CEOs. Let's do that. Esther Baijet, President and the Chief Executive Officer Novozymes, Denmark, Alliance of CEO Climate Leaders. Bearish or bullish?
It's this situation that we're living today. It shows the value of de-risking, the value of having optionality, the value of resilience. Our dependence to fossil base, it's way too strong. And we need to bring alternatives. The peak of fossil-based solutions, it's just here. The era of fossil-based solutions, it's over. So now is the time to even bolder and start investing faster on that solutions of the future, of the new era. Green Deal, it's moving all of us in the right direction. We companies, we have the responsibility to sit at the table and show what we think good looks like. There are unnecessary roadblocks that make our life complex for no value. Let me give you a couple. We're investing collectively $8 trillion per year, subsidizing the past. $8 trillion. That's 8% of the global GDP. It goes into subsidiaries into fossil-based solutions. It's not that we're not subsidizing the future enough, it's that we're subsidizing the past. We have regulation that creates unnecessary roadblocks. It takes 6 years to get the permit for a windmill. It takes 6 to 8 years to register a microbe to replace fertilizers and bring sustainable agricultural. It's much faster in US. So in US, it takes maybe 2 years to register a microbe to replace fertilizers. So it's, yes, the competition with IRA from a subsidiaries point of view. There is an influx of investments from Europe going into US, close to 30 projects were announced since IRA. Being a European company, we're investing in US. It's not because of the subsidiaries, it's because of the demand, it's faster there.
Thank you, sir. Maxim Timchenko, Chief Executive Officer, DTEC Ukraine. Bullish or bearish?
Absolutely bullish. And I can say from corporate side, I think every single energy company incorporated Green Deal goals and mechanism into that strategy. But from perspective of Ukraine, it's even more important. Second month of full-scale invasion, we asked the world to help us. And specifically talking about synchronization of our electricity and connection of Ukrainian electricity grid with European. And the request was, please help us now, and we will help you in the future. Help you in building energy security of European Union and bringing more green power from Ukraine. We have enormous potential in wind and solar. We have developed infrastructure. We can be the place, as President Zelensky already said, green energy hub for Europe.
Thank you. Prime Minister, let me continue with you. You mentioned during the COP28 that Greece can be provider of energy security for many European countries. How will the geopolitical landscape impact the continent's move towards green energy?
First of all, may I address a very interesting point that was made, which I think we need to register and listen very carefully to the business leaders developing innovative green solutions. What you mentioned, I think, is particularly important when it comes to regulation and leveraging the full potential of the single market. When you tell us that it takes, for example, 2 years to obtain the necessary registration in the US versus 6 years in the European Union, this is something we should take note of, because we talk a lot about the single market. It is our main advantage when it comes to convincing companies that they should invest in Europe. But if there are bureaucratic restrictions or bottlenecks of this type, then we will be in a position of disadvantage rather than advantage when it comes to encouraging companies to invest in Europe with a primary focus on the European market. So I think this is something that we should take note of. And as we go into the next cycle of the European elections, and as we all roll out our agenda for the next 5 years, the completion of the single market, which may seem mundane, boring, bureaucratic, not something that may move the masses towards a common goal, is something which should be very, very high on our priorities. Now, sorry for the digression, because I thought the point that you raised was very, very important. Let me come back to your question. Energy security and what could Greece's role be in this evolving landscape. We are currently a net importer of energy. And just to put this into context, when Greece decided 4 years ago to aggressively move away from coal, we decided to use natural gas as a transition fuel. We don't have nuclear, so it was the only obvious choice. We spent 7 billion euros in 2022 importing natural gas. And normally this bill is 1 billion, just to put things into context. So we said that in the short term, we want to be an energy provider for at least the Balkans by building strong interconnections, pipelines, floating storage and regasification units in northern Greece, leverage our unique geographic potential, possibly even, if necessary, export gas up to Ukraine, because if you actually look at the map, the distance is not that far. But in the medium to long term, we aspire to be exporters of green energy by harnessing the significant potential that we have, in particular when it comes to offshore wind. If you look at the map of the Mediterranean, the place where you have the maximum amount of sustained, constant, strong winds is the Aegean Sea. So part of our medium to long-term plan is to really make a breakthrough when it comes to offshore wind. But in order to do that, we also need to build the necessary interconnections. Finally, we should also look at the interconnections with Africa. Africa has significant, if not unlimited, potential to produce green energy, particularly from solar. We are in discussions with Egypt to build an interconnection that will connect Greece to Egypt. And of course, I think these are all projects that should be within the project of European common interest framework, because they're not particularly important just for Greece, they're important for Europe as a whole.
Vice President.
What I think it's very important indeed is that we have to get our sequencing better. So we invested a lot in renewables. I mean, the last year we've been very proud that for the first time we produced more energy from renewables than for fossil fuels. But Prime Minister knows very well that very often all that potential of wind and solar we cannot use. We have so-called curtailment because our grids are not able to carry the electricity to the final consumers, because the grids do not have that capacity, or because we lack enough interconnectors in Europe. And therefore, I think we really need to make sure that we would be investing in the grids and building them to be ready not for the next year, but to be ready for the climate neutral future for 2050. Because we simply need to upgrade the grid in a way which would be ready for the climate neutral future. And coming to the technological roadblocks, I totally agree with you that we need to focus on it as a laser beam, because I see it in many aspects. That we've been not too cautious, or we kind of developed the legislations or the technologies several years ago, and simply the advancement is much faster. So now we are creating new opportunity. We propose so-called Net Zero Industry Act, where a big part of it is what can we do with the faster permitting. We want to use the overriding public interest principle, which would help us to move much faster, which would motivate us in the Commission, but also our member states, that if it comes for the strategic project, there will be sort of one-stop shop where we would help with the permitting, where we would be able to provide, I would say, the guidance to the market operators. How can we help you with different funds we have in Europe, because sometimes it's very complex and you really need, some kind of agency to help you with all that advice, just simply to make things much faster. And last point on single market for the Green Deal, I totally agree with the Prime Minister. The single market brought Europe success. Thanks to the single market, removing the internal barriers among the member states, we actually grew up the biggest economy in the world, and we have to make sure that it's also fine-tuned to this new economy of the 21st century, which is built on the green technologies. I'm particularly happy that they managed gradually to link up more and more Ukraine to the single market.
Maxim Timchenko, let's go to you now. With the EU leaders deciding to open the accession negotiations with Ukraine in December 2023, how can Ukraine contribute to supporting the continent's decarbonization efforts and the future energy security, both as a future member and today as well?
On the first day of full-scale invasion, we disconnected from Russia and Belarus electricity grid. It was part of our 3-day testing. As part of our synchronization process, which should be taking place in 2025. And I think that day we disconnected forever. I am so grateful to our European partners, European Commission, and to all parties involved, that in 3 weeks' time we managed to connect. It was emergency connection, but it still helped us to survive because we get some electricity out of Europe. And of course, after this moment, historical moment for our sector, we stated, now it's time for us to think how we can help Europe. And even now, during 2 years of war, we really do that. Our company built 114 megawatt wind farm during the war, invested 200 million euro. Just 1 month ago, we announced the second phase of this wind farm, investing 450 million with support of Denmark and supply of turbines from Vestas. During the war, we restored transmission line with Poland so that we improve our interconnection. Just some examples what can be done during the war and what role Ukraine can play, even under current circumstances. So I think that Green Deal and all the goals we discuss here will be driving force for Ukraine. And I think most of economic reforms we need to do one or other way they're connected with the European Green Deal. And basically that's the foundation of our future.
With the legislative framework for the European Green Deal, if we're focusing on this, is largely set, I want you to comment on how can its implementation be accelerated in a socially just way. Maxim Timchenko, could you please comment on this? Because Ukraine has another, it's a different dimension when it comes to the social just way of implementing the transition.
Absolutely. We're in a situation when we have to balance. Coal mining and coal power generation play a crucial role in national security at the moment. And we have thousands of coal miners working in Ukraine at the moment. From the other side, Ukraine is committed to follow all standards and regulation coming from Europe. So for us, it's extremely important that it's done in a fair way for the next 10 years. We don't ask for exclusion from the rules, but we need some time for that. And again, taking as an example our company, we are the major coal producer in the country, but at the same time, we are the major renewable company. And it takes us many years to move from coal to renewables, wind and solar in Ukraine and building battery storage. So as it was already mentioned, Ukraine is playing a very important role in security of Europe. So we talk about energy security, definitely defense, it's clear for everybody. Food security, as already was said. But I think Ukraine can play an important role in supply chain security, moving production to Ukraine. And that's another example how the social way, how we can train our people released from coal industry or other industries not aligned with the green and build new production, new manufacturing, solar panels or parts of wind turbines or any other way with such a skilled people with such a background in engineering, in production we have in the country.
We have to continue to stay firm on where we're going without blinking. But then we should not jump unconsciously. There is a strong dependence to fossil base that we cannot simply ignore. Then the investments need to be for the future. Every single investment needs to be for green energy, for solar, for wind, for methane, for power to X. Injecting the cash, the investments on these precious dollars, these precious euros on the solutions of the future. Same for food, for agriculture, investments on regenerative agriculture, investments on plant-based protein, investments on what are we going to move faster to this moving the era of fossil base behind us. This should be a gradual move. And that will generate growth and that will generate jobs.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
When you want to build public support, start with the obvious win-win solutions. Retrofitting houses, for example, is a win-win proposal. We have used European funds very effectively in this direction. Or go to a small island and explain to them why decarbonizing is actually easier than they think. If you build a PV plant, there may be some resistance at the beginning, but when they see the electricity bills and they realize they pay much less for electricity, you will start building support. So start with the quick wins and be very careful with agriculture, because agriculture in its own is a very, very complex topic, very difficult to decarbonize, and we need to be very sensitive when it comes to reactions from our farmers.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot to the speakers and thanks for everybody here.